Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to a brand new edition of Plank of the Week. We are back in the place where it all started, ladies and gentlemen, but they've done it up a little bit since I was last here, so you might notice one or two changes from last week. But welcome to the big show. Welcome to the place where you don't have to be worried about being judgmental, because that's what we do for you. We will judge everybody who has been a plank this week, and we will find out precisely who will win in just under an hour's time. I'm delighted to say that we are helped today with a magnificent panel of expertise, kicking off with Dr. Renee Hoenderkamp. Welcome back, Renee. Nice to see you. Peter Bleksley is here, of course, as well, a man that's arrested more criminals than I've had hot dinners. And also Laura Dodsworth as well, a woman of many talents. Some of them I can't even mention. And Leon Emirali, a former government advisor. I mean, what a team. You can't imagine a more qualified set of people to deliver this to the audience. Plank of the Week, that's what they're going to be getting at the end. So let's kick things off without further ado. Renee, who's your first nomination?
Well, I think we have to start the show with a dictator, don't we?
We do.
So I've decided to go for Sadiq Khan.
Good idea, very wise.
Well, you know, not only is he trying to drive through this ULEZ scheme, and he's up against the ropes a little bit on it, and he's used flawed figures, he's ruled people out of the consultation because it didn't quite come out the way he wanted it to. He's now decided that if he doesn't get White Van Man on side, he's not going to get this through. So he's decided to tell us, with the help of Imperial College, and we know what they were like in COVID.
Yes. The Sage Brigade.
The Sage Brigade. He's decided to tell White Van Man that unless he's allowed to implement ULEZ, their little swimmers are going to be harmed and their sperm count will drop.
Yes.
So he's hoping that they will all instantly get rid of their white vans, notwithstanding the fact that they actually need them to earn a living, to pay their current children. But if they don't get rid of their white vans, they will have no more children because they'll have no more swimmers.
It seems like a bit of a desperate measure, doesn't it?
Desperate, absolutely up against the ropes. You know, as soon as they really, really want to convince men of something that they're not managing to, they go down below.
Yeah.
It was just the same in COVID, actually. Oh, the men aren't paying attention. How are we get men's attention? I know. We'll go for their manhood. Yeah. And they warn about all these problems that there's going to be with little swimmers. Are we being polite on air? Or you know, their erections, and they always go for that part of the body to get the men to care. It just looks so transparent, doesn't it?
Is it scary?
If this was such a big problem, why didn't he mention it a bit earlier?
Yeah, I mean, you would think if we were all going to not only die from air pollution, but actually have no sperm, you know, that would be something that you should put a government health warning on, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've burnt a bit of rubber over the years, you know, doing the miles that I have done.
Of course.
You know,
sometimes at high speed, I would imagine.
Yeah, indeed. But there's a certain surgeon that knows that my sperm count is as low as it could possibly be.
Okay.
And on that distasteful note, I'll let somebody else.
Thank you very much. Leon, I mean, the fact of the matter is now that Sadiq Khan is not only up against it, but he's actually now got the legal fraternity having a look to see whether what he wants to do might actually be unlawful.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sadiq Khan is basically going through his list of who he can annoy and ticking them off one by one, isn't he? And I think he's doing a pretty good job of it. But I
mean, you think in most political situations, when you have this much opposition, that you might kind of take a step back from it. A bit like the other day, we learned that, you know, the scheme to get 7 different types of recycling, actually they're not going to do it now because everybody kicked off so much about it that actually it's not really worth it. Well, surely this is the same situation. It's not really worth doing.
But the really weird thing about this is he's telling us that there are 4,000 deaths a year from air pollution, which there's absolutely zero evidence for.
There was one, wasn't there?
One, very sad little girl,
Yeah.
and it contributed to her death.
Yes.
She had asthma. I'm sure that had part of it as well. He's telling us that it can damage our babies when they're in utero. He's telling us that men's sperm counts are going to drop and the population will just die off. So if it really is that serious, why is he just not saying, right, that's it, no more cars? What he's actually saying is, we're going to kill you, we're going to lower your sperm count, but actually, if you pay me £12.50, you can carry on doing it.
That's fine, exactly right. Yeah. It's a bit like this anti-smoking argument, isn't it? You know, they're not banning smoking, they're just taxing it out of spite, and then they're using the money, I suppose, maybe for good things. But in the end, if they really thought it was that dangerous, surely they'd ban it.
Yeah. Oh, that money's like a religious indulgence. Do you remember people used to pay money for somebody else to pray for them and let them off their sins? I mean, but that's actually completely in keeping with a lot of this environmentalism, which feels a bit like a religion, a religious cult. You know, the £12.50 you pay is going to do nothing at all, like you say, for sperm count and that 4,000 deaths a year. That's just a statistical construct. Actually, he needs reporting to the Office for National Statistics for totally misusing data.
But he's allowed to do that. He's allowed to do that because you can misuse data as long as you're on narrative. And, that's fine.
Yeah, you don't get criticised.
You don't get criticised if we used it.
Because his heart's in the right place. He wants to stop climate change.
Yeah. Is Professor Pants Down? Is he Imperial College?
He is.
Well, there you go. I think there's clearly an obsession in that part of London where it's below the belt. It's clearly
really
where they're
is.
studying.
Yeah, haven't heard from him for a while. Professor Neil Ferguson, you're thinking of, right? Yeah. Peter Bleksley, who's your first nomination?
Stand by. Stand by. I got some breaking news. Nobody from the SNP has been arrested in the last hour.
Shocking. Shocking. Mind you, are you sure?
Well, I haven't got my phone, so
yeah.
I
mean, it might be that something's happened. We just haven't heard about it yet. But what an extraordinary situation. The
This
SNP have been a
political
Plank of the Week more, I think, in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks than ever. And this time it's because the Treasurer, Mr. Colin Beattie, was arrested, right?
Yeah. I mean, and this whole party has gone from an election-winning machine to imploding in just a few short weeks. It's quite astonishing.
It really is. And I mean, it's got so bad that even at Prime Minister's Questions this week, Rishi Sunak was able to poke fun at the SNP because their guy Stephen Flynn got up, who's usually linked a bit like yourself to a kind of Andrew Tate lookalike, Leon, and except he doesn't look quite as interesting as you. But he's tried to get up and sort of make some political point about the Tories. And Rishi Sunak just said, well, we're just getting on with it. We're just motoring on here in the Tory party, making reference to this motorhome, which sits in front of Peter Murrell's mother's drive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. And everybody's going, why have they got a motorhome? And why, if they were short of money, didn't they sell the motorhome?
I tell you what, this is going to make one hell of a Netflix drama, isn't it, in a couple of years? Because it's just twist and turn.
House of McCards.
Yeah, indeed.
But it's bizarre, isn't it? That I think I've won Plank twice with Nicola Sturgeon because she was so absurd and so dictatorial. So they've gone from being absolutely controlled by this little tyrant of a woman to now just being in absolute disarray. It's from the sublime to the ridiculous.
And they've now got this ridiculous First Minister, Humza Useless, as he's sometimes known, properly known as Humza Yousaf. Here's a little clip from the Scottish Parliament this week. Megan Gallagher, the Tory leader, ripping into him. And why not?
The SNP is in total meltdown. Its former chief executive and now its current treasurer have been arrested amid a police investigation into the party's finances. And leaked footage has shown Nicola Sturgeon trying to shut down scrutiny.
While we absolutely face challenges, I'd rather be standing here with the opportunity to deliver for the people of Scotland rather than languishing in the opposition like Megan Gallagher and the Scottish Tories.
Well, you never know. He might be in the opposition sooner than he thinks, but he's the continuity candidate, right? Which can't be the best place to be at the moment.
On Tuesday, he walks into a room full of journalists, OK? And he opens up because there's questions about, obviously, the arrests. And he says, there's an ongoing investigation, so I absolutely cannot say anything about it. And in the next breath, he said, well, he's currently being interviewed. He's in a police station. It's like,
I mean, it can't be long before Nicola Sturgeon has to be helping them with their inquiries, presumably.
Well, she always goes out half an hour before they come and make the arrests, apparently.
Yeah, she does. So, I mean, but it is absolutely unbelievable. But, of course, the other funny thing this week with the SNP was that Colin Beattie, the Treasurer, who was arrested, was then trending on Twitter sort of for about a couple of days. But the interesting thing is it wasn't because he was in the SNP or because, in fact, we're going to see a picture of Colin Beattie. It wasn't because of the fact that he'd been arrested. It was, in fact, because he looks exactly like Phil Mitchell. Anyway, that's enough of them. Let's go to Laura Dodsworth for the first nomination from you.
I would like to nominate Edward Whittingham, the Just Stop Oil protester who struck fear into the hearts of oil barons around the world when he disrupted the World Snooker Championships with orange powder on a snooker table. There it is. Now, this...
And it's Edred, isn't it?
His full name is Edred.
Sounds like a Viking warrior.
A lot of these environmental protesters are really quite posh, quite privileged.
Oh, they all are.
And the main reason that I'd like to nominate him is that everything about that display looked narcissistic, petulant and spoilt. You know, if you've had a toddler eat a dinner they don't want in a high chair and then they just flip the food up. That's exactly what it looked like when he spilt the orange powder everywhere. And, you know, the poor snooker players, the audience, the viewers, not to mention the cleaners, had that event ruined by his petulance.
This is the thing. People go to the snooker because they want a bit of respite from the world. Life's tough at the minute, I think, for a lot of people. You go to snooker, you go to sporting events because you want a break from it all. And people like Edred are going in there with their privilege and just throwing politics back on the table.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is that, as we saw at the Grand National, how they brought that protest to an end in the end was the local people actually gathered up the protesters and dragged them away. And I think if these protesters are not careful, they're going to be on the wrong end of a protest.
We've seen that with Justice Paul, haven't we?
Sorry, if Edred popped down my local working men's club and climbed on the snooker tables in there and pulled that stunt, right? Okay, it would be a very different outcome of what happened at the World Snooker
Championship. And let's have a look at what he
Championship.
actually did, because I think we've got the clip.
I don't quite know what that was for. Terrible scenes here at the Crucible.
What an absolute plank. Apparently there was another woman who was meant to jump on the other table, but apparently she didn't manage it. I don't know whether that was
Referee tackled her.
Unlike a lot of these activists, I think she had trouble getting her leg over.
Indeed, absolutely right. Well said. Now,
Actually,
the other problem...
Talking of getting the leg over, though, you know, great news about Edred. He has announced in an interview that he's not planning on having children because it is the correct moral decision, apparently, not to bring children into a world that might not ultimately be habitable.
Well, has he been talking to Sadiq Khan? Maybe he just doesn't have a very high sperm count because of all the cars and everything.
Well, the thing is, we've had enough children between us to make up for Edred anyway, haven't we?
I think we have, yeah. We're well over the
we're over 10 between just you and I.
I think it's 11, isn't it?
You can hire Edred. You can hire him. He's got his own website.
Have you?
And you can hire him. Well, I'm thinking of spending a few quid, right? Hiring him for the weekend, right? Come down to my
him
house.
up to something.
Yeah, I'll just glue him to something. Yeah. And I've got a couple of house bricks, so I could ensure that he never had any children.
Yes. Well, do you know what? Here's the thing. Talking about posh demonstrators, right? I got this tweet this week from somebody. The Colston statue down in Bristol was toppled by a bloke called Milo Ponsford, right? The M4 gluing stunt was performed by Indigo Rumbelow, and now we've got Edred Whittingham.
Yeah.
We're really getting these names. Julie Hartley-Brewer had a guy on from Extinction Rebellion this week who was called Etienne.
Yeah, it's a very middle class.
It really is.
Hobby.
I bet no one called Edred has ever been to the snooker in their life before.
No, or Sheffield.
No, exactly.
Because he's a posh student at Exeter University, which, as everybody knows, is a kind of dropout place for people who can't get into Oxbridge. Because it's on the list. There's about 4 places: Bristol, Exeter, a couple of others, you know, UCL. If you can't get into Oxford, that's where you go. Well, and his dad is some kind of millionaire investor.
Yeah.
Well, they're always posh because the thing is, working class people, people from poorer countries, they want the advancements and the modernity that fuel brings. You know, we don't want to go back to the dark ages, do we? But if mummy and daddy have got quite a few acres of land and you've been brought up on nice holidays and probably drive around in Range Rovers, it's an absolute indulgence. And you know, that's why it looks so petulant and narcissistic to try and spoil everybody else's fun, because he can't relate to what life would be like without any of the modernity that we've got.
But also this thing about not having children, he says on moral grounds, right? Because they all think they have the moral high ground. They all think that they are the ones who are right and everybody else is wrong and we all have to do what they say based on absolutely nothing at all. You know, I mean, there's plenty of evidence that the climate is changing. There's plenty of evidence that some places are getting wetter, other places are getting drier. You know, there's all sorts of arguments that are being made around it. But the idea, the one thing that they can't prove or can't say is that if we all stop driving tomorrow, it wouldn't make any difference at all. Nothing would change.
Sperm counts would go up.
Yes. That's true.
Well, I think if we all gave up living the way we live, it wouldn't make an iota of difference because China would still be polluting, America would still be polluting. And I think, you know, a lot of us who accept that climate change is an issue, we're put off when we look at those types of images. It's not the way you bring people on board.
And I think there is evidence as well, isn't there, that an awful lot of people who might have even just as recently as, say, a year or two ago, been kind of sympathetic, and you might have gone, well, you know, I'll go to Sainsbury's and not get a plastic bag for the apples, and, you know, I'll carry them in my arms like this and drop a few. But, you know, I'll pay for them at the end before they go, have you weighed them? And you go, no, I haven't weighed them, that's your job. But anyway, you would kind of do all that, but now people are just going, I don't think so. I'm just going to stick 2 fingers up. And especially if they are threatening to do. Extinction Rebellion gave us the ultimatum this week, didn't they? And I know we're going to talk about the Grand National later, but they talked about, you know, if the government doesn't do something by 5 o'clock, you know, a week on Tuesday or something, you know, they're going to do something. Well, what are you going to do? say something interesting.
Well, what Ed Red should do is change his name to Ed Orange.
Very good. I see what you did there. And if they do demonstrate against the London Marathon, I mean, even the marathon people would not be happy about that.
Well, if you think how much money the London Marathon raises for really, really good causes, some of them, I'm sure, will be climate, animal preservation, you know, and they're going to disrupt that. They've lost the plot.
They have.
People are going to start taking the law into their own hands.
They're just crazy extremists, it seems to me. And I wonder whether there's going to have to be new laws brought in. And there was a barrister actually quoted this week who said that if you are sponsoring these people, there was some quite high-profile people who give them a lot of money. And if you're a sponsor for some of these people, some of them are like old members of Pink Floyd and stuff like that, they will go, oh yeah, we'll save the planet. You know, they could be liable for actually coercing or possibly encouraging criminal acts to be carried out and funding them.
On a serious note, people like Ed Red are quite unhinged. They seem to be taken over by kind of a cult thinking.
Yeah.
And I think it actually is only a question of time before people in the environmental movement start committing acts of terrorism. I know that sounds extreme, but you know what they're doing at the moment is inconvenient. It can edge into dangerous when they're blocking roads and ambulances can't get through, etc. But because they think the stakes are so high, because they think Gaia is dying, you know, how far would some of them go? I'm not sure they'd risk their own skin, but would they risk other people's lives? And I think it's edging into quite dangerous territory.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Leon, time for yours. Before we come to you, shall we play the video that you're going to be talking about?
Yes, please.
Let's have a look at this. This is Arsenal Football Club. Now, this is a scene taken recently. There's a little mascot there called Olivia Murray. She's 8 years old, and the players are all signing a shirt. But the problem for a lot of people, particularly on social media, was that not one of the players, all of whom are star names, all of whom are making absolute fortunes, millions and millions of pounds, not one of them's even looking at her. There's no contact whatsoever. Yes, they're signing a shirt. But, you know, really? Is this the best they could do?
I'm a Spurs fan, so I take a great amount of joy in slagging off Arsenal. But genuinely, as a human being, you look at that, the poor girl, you know, these football players who are paid, you know, millions of pounds a year, gazillions of pounds a year, and yet if they just said hello, if they just tapped her on the shoulder, it would have made her year. And yet they couldn't even take their earbuds out to acknowledge that she existed. And I just think,
said thank you. Her voice, she said thank you.
Isn't it a sorry state of affairs when they can't even acknowledge this poor child? And, you know, they're overprivileged, these footballers, and I think it's about time that they were able to, you know, actually connect with the fans and pay their wages ultimately.
Well, this is it. I mean, the problem I think for a lot of this as well, of course, is on social media it became very tribal, because if you're an Arsenal fan, you don't like to see it, so you immediately sort of kick back and go, oh, there's other bits of video that showed that she had a lovely time, and it's not right to say that they didn't pay her any attention at all. But it's certainly right to say they didn't pay her any attention there. You know, it doesn't look good at all, does it?
And she said thank you to them, and they didn't even acknowledge that.
Well, because they couldn't hear it.
Yeah, I mean, that breaks my heart. As a mum, it breaks my heart.
And it turns out, Peter, that you have to pay for this privilege of being a mascot. So they're actually not even fulfilling the basic service of you for what you've bought for your daughter.
It costs an absolute fortune to have your kid as mascot. But you see, the rot set in some years ago. And I first really kind of became aware of it when you see these incredibly highly paid footballers getting off the team coach, and you'll see youngsters line up with a programme, perhaps they want an autograph or a selfie, and they come off the coach, they've got headphones on, and they just get their heads down and walk straight past everybody. It's an excuse not to engage with anybody.
It started, I think, at one of the World Cups. I mean, the England players started wearing headphones, and for them, it was partly because they didn't want to be asked any questions by journalists, because at the time that was sometimes what used to happen. And so they just put them on and they just phase everybody out.
And football has changed so dramatically over the years. When I was that young girl's age, I waited outside Loftus Road for my QPR heroes to come out, way beyond when it was dark. And they'd come out, and it might be 7:30, you know, they'd have had a drink in the players' bar. And they'd come out, you'd have a natter, they'd sign your programme, and you'd go home feeling 10 foot tall. You'd met your hero and spoken to them. That lot.
Does it come back to how, as a society now, we seem to have disregarded children as being the future, that the ones that we should nurture, we should look after, you know, because they are the future. She's potentially an England women's football player, and these guys are not giving her a moment of aspiration.
Well, they could have inspired her to go on to do great things, even if it's not in football. You know, it might be whatever in her career, but she's felt that she's been engaged with by her heroes. And what's funny about that clip is Arsenal tweeted it, thinking they were going to be praised for them signing the shirt. shirt, and yet all that's happened is people have recognised their players are a bunch of overpaid, ignorant...
Yeah, it hasn't done them very well.
No.
The problem is, as soon as it's a service, as soon as it's a transaction, that's where something's gone wrong. Because the idea of bringing children in, making them a mascot, I mean, that could be a lottery. It doesn't have to be paid for. And as soon as they just see it as transactional, they're not seeing that as a little girl who looks up to them. It should be a moment of humanity, not pound signs, dollar signs. It shouldn't be a transaction.
But that is the problem with very, very successful, sporting activity now. That everything has got to be signed, everything has got to be paid for. Remember Lionel Messi when they found out in Barcelona that he was getting paid some ludicrous amount of money for his imaging rights, and it wasn't just about the fact that he was getting paid loads of money to play for them, but they actually made more money selling his shirts and selling his pictures and selling all of that. So very, very.
I think back, Mike. You'll remember this. Wimbledon. You'll remember too. You won't, Leon. At Wimbledon, when Jimmy Connors used to get someone out of the audience and sit in their chair while they went on, and it was very human. Right. They were part of it, and they recognised how important the fans were.
Yeah. There used to be personality in sport, and there just isn't anymore. It's become so sort of sanitised because of the commercial aspect of it, and you don't get those personalities.
Maybe the players are all terrified to do anything in case it also looks wrong or it looks bad, or somebody goes, "Why did you rub the top of her head, you weirdo?" Yeah. Who knows? Anyway, Plank of the Week is already underway. Then we've got plenty more to do. Coming up in the next bit, here's what we're going to be talking about those junior doctors. I bet Dr. Renee didn't go on strike. We'll be back with more from Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night. What better way to sit here than with us, watching all of the people that have done something really, really stupid over the course of the last few days. We've already had a great start. We've already had, Sadiq Khan's already in there. We've already had Just Stop Oil as well. A football club, Arsenal. I know that some of you Arsenal fans won't like that. But now it's time for me to give you my first nomination. And I'm going to take you all the way back to last week, ladies and gentlemen, when the junior doctors decided to have a 4-day strike. Not just because they don't like their pay and conditions, but mostly because it was Easter week, right? Because they went all the way through from Good Friday to Easter Saturday to Easter Sunday to Easter Monday, where everybody knows nobody really works in the NHS because they take time off because it's the bank holiday, because nobody gets sick on bank holiday weekend. And then they decided to take the Tuesday, the Wednesday, the Thursday, the Friday off, which then leads them into the next weekend. So effectively, I think they had roughly 10 days off. Right, but the biggest problem they had was that the strike was organised by a young man who's only 28 years of age by the name of Dr. Robert Lawrenson. The problem was he wasn't on strike because he was on holiday. And this is the guy that heads the BMA. This is the guy that supposedly won't negotiate with the Secretary of State for Health or the government. He comes from a very wealthy family. They've got all sorts of shares in all sorts of companies. And he was abroad at a wedding. And his excuse was that he was terribly sorry that he'd arranged it some time ago, like last year, when one of his best friends was getting married. So he couldn't join his fellow comrades on the picket line. And I mean, it seems to me it really does show up what the problem is with these junior doctors. They're already, and when he describes how busy he is, right, and he talks about in addition to his doctoral duties, he does all this union-related activity. You're kind of going, well, doesn't it sound like you're worn out to me, mate? And now you're taking a nice holiday abroad for somebody's wedding. You're completely undermining the entire actual, consultancy process.
Can't be that badly paid if he's wanting off on a holiday abroad.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing is that he will have got paid because he will have booked that holiday a year ago, and he will be paid, and all of the people on the strike line who walked out of their roles will not be paid. So some could say that that was hypocritical in itself.
Yes.
Secondly, he's the head of the BMA, Mike. He will have had input into what days they were going to strike.
Yes.
So if he really had to go to this wedding, I understand people have family commitments they really want to go to, pick a different day for the strikes.
Right.
But as you rightly say, they did it after Easter and then before a weekend. 10 days where there would have been almost no service, a skeleton service. Yeah. We already know that people die more at weekends than they do in the week because of the service.
Because there's nobody there.
Because there's nobody there. Right. So people will have died this week. And I'm sorry, as much as I support people withdrawing their labour, and I do, this is outrageous, and he is outrageous for doing what he did.
And we also know that something like 200,000 procedures were cancelled because of the strike.
So would you have been paid, you're saying?
Yes, because
so
it was
that's
holiday.
like breaking a picket line. That's a really luxurious, cheeky way of breaking a picket line, isn't it? Going on holiday while everyone else is striking.
It's bizarre.
It's a bit like what some of the teachers do, because a lot of the teachers in the teaching strike situation don't tell the school whether they're going to be on strike or not. And so the school then has to take action to say, cancel the school business for that day. And so technically they're not on strike. They then get paid. So it's a real racket they work.
I think the public would have a lot more sympathy with these people who are striking, and some of them have, very just grounds to do so, I think. But they are not striking with dignity. They're not striking in a way that allows us to get on board with what they're trying to achieve. And I just think they're not exactly covering themselves in glory by swanning off on holiday when they should be, supposedly supporting their comrades.
And he also, because he did get caught out, which obviously he wasn't planning on telling anybody about, he was exposed in the newspaper, which is always the best way. He issued an apology to his fellow colleagues on an online forum in which he said, I can see that you feel undermined by my actions and I am really sorry that I've contributed to that. So he realises that he got it wrong. But even better than that, his own family are disgusted by his actions, not only because of the fact that he went on holiday, but because of the fact he's organising the strike in the first place. And a couple of members of his family are actually doctors. And they think he's behaving disgracefully because, like most sensible people, they don't think doctors should be going on strike.
Well, and they certainly shouldn't have done it where they went from 0 to their first strike, which was 3 days, and that was always my opinion. There's lots of ways that doctors can actually make their protest heard. For example, if they just worked to the hours that they're employed, the hospitals would struggle because there is so much goodwill given by doctors. They often work well over their hours. So if they suddenly said, right, that's it, I'm doing my 9 till 5 if that's my shift, or my 8 till 8 in the morning, whatever it is, no more, then people would sit up and take notice. They didn't have to do this. They know people are going to die. And this argument that strikes have to be impactful is irrelevant when it involves lives.
Yeah.
It's impactful when a train doesn't run. That's impactful. But when somebody might die, that's immoral.
It really is. And this is what his father said, Dr. Lawrence's own father, Ian Lawrence, said that basically we have a conflict of interest because we're taxpayers and we're customers of the NHS, and he's on the other side wanting more money. That's his own father, for heaven's sake. Anyway, time for your second nomination, Dr. Renee.
So you can see my blood pressure raised now.
Yes, I can.
So I'm nominating Dylan Mulvaney.
Yes.
The man who has secured for himself hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sponsorships. And you see him here presenting Bud Light, dressed up like Audrey Hepburn. And I think we're going to see...
Because Audrey Hepburn's a big beer drinker. I don't know what's going on with that.
Breakfast at Tiffany's and all that. You know. And what I'm angry about here is I'm angry with the sponsors, for sure, but I'm actually really angry with these men who parody women. And I actually think that Dylan Mulvaney hates women.
Yes.
Absolutely hates women. Because everything he's done over the last 365 days of girlhood and womanhood is a parody of women. He's pranced around in Nike leggings and a bra in a way that I've never seen a woman move in a gym kit.
It looks ridiculous.
Looks ridiculous. I've never seen women bragging about drinking Bud Light. He's wearing makeup in a way that he looks like Aunt Sally from Wurzel Gummidge with great big red cheeks. And actually, he looks very childlike. It's almost paedophilic and it's creepy.
The childlike aspect is creepy.
It is.
Days of girlhood I find beyond insulting. It sets my whole radar off and tingles. A man shouldn't be pretending to be a girl.
Pardon my ignorance, but has he got meat and 2 veg?
Well, I think so. Have a look. I mean, it's quite small meat and 2 veg, but have a look at the Bud Light clip first.
This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya!
Well, let's hope Bud Light wins some money because they lost a bucket load by doing that.
It's bad business. I mean, for goodness sake, they had to release an advert after that came out with a very patriotic,
the horse, right?
Tub thumper, appealing to those
very masculine,
Republican Americans.
There's also this, by the way, you referred to it already. This ridiculous advert for Nike where he's prancing about like nothing like a woman. Have a look. So, Budweiser have dropped a major bollock, I think I can say, to be honest.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, well, they have, by appointing a man to pretend to be a woman.
Well, all all
who
of these
actually has
companies
to.
have. You know, there's a beauty company in the States, Ultra Beauty, that's appointed him as their ambassador.
Yeah.
You know, it's as if they can't give these jobs to women who deserve it.
That's a really good point. I mean, I think that the idea that Nike have given sponsorship to a man pretending to be an athlete, pretending to be a girl, is just appalling, because women don't get many of the sponsorship deals anyway. So give it to a woman athlete.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as a non-athlete woman who likes running and exercise, I found the way he pranced around in the Nike underwear quite triggering in a way. I bet you'll know what I mean, Renee. When you were younger, did you ever get teased for the way you run or the way you throw because you did it like a girl?
Yeah.
So to see a man exaggerating how a girl does it is quite offensive.
It is
As a woman who's had to
offensive.
push through that, and I like running and I like exercise,
It's
and
also
I'm
really insulting.
embarrassed about doing it like
Yeah.
a girl, and then he's taking the mick out of doing
And
it
it's
like
also
a
really
girl.
insulting to people like Sharon Davis, who's so brilliant on this subject, because of the kind of achievements that people like her as female athletes and elite athletes have done.
And all the wonderful, wonderful women athletes,
Yes.
which so many of us are so proud of
Yeah.
and patriotic about, you know, and yet a company goes and
I think that
employs someone like that.
the problem is that you've got the people making these decisions in companies that are so alienated and so out of touch with the people who actually use their products. Do Bud Light drinkers care about trans issues? It's probably not their priority.
Well-
Do Nike customers care about trans issues? Again, it's probably not their priority.
No.
So why on earth are they using that as a way
But
to elevate their brand? I
actually
don't
think
get
this
it.
is a really interesting tipping point, because for the first time ever in America, celebrities have come out against the trans movement and have made videos on Twitter saying, do not buy Bud Light, this is outrageous. And their shares have just had billions wiped off of them.
Good.
So for the first time ever, there's been a pushback. And up until now, it was always, be kind, you know, be kind to these people. Well, no, let's not be kind. I don't want my daughter watching this thinking this is what a woman does. This is how a woman wears her makeup. This is how she prances around when
This
she's
is
got
how a woman
leggings
does
on.
sport in her
Yes,
bra doing
exactly.
chorus line high kicks.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. If I had a daughter, I would not want her to watch the Nike ad. It's genuinely offensive as a
It is.
woman, isn't it, to see it?
I think
Well, I've got sons and I don't want them to watch it either.
exactly right. They probably wouldn't want to. Who would want to? Anyway, Peter, down to you. You've got some sporting activities to talk about?
Well, I've done you all a favour because I've spent quite a lot of time today looking at the Animal Rising website. Okay? You know those clowns who try to disrupt
You joined?
the Grand National?
What a
No, I
stupid
haven't.
name.
No, I haven't joined and I haven't donated. And I looked at it so nobody else has to, okay? It is truly the most uninspiring waste of time. So, last weekend at the Grand National, they all rock up there. Oh, but if you read the website, by the way, okay, they're all about the welfare of animals. They're all about getting towards a plant-based diet for us all, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay? We've all got to have a plant-based diet. And so, in order to try and aid their battle to improve the lot of animals, they go to a horse racing stadium and upset a load of animals.
Yes.
Where's the sense in that?
There isn't any sense in it, is there?
There was an ad playing on the TV that showed horses around the world working in the most awful conditions with their hooves all bent over, being whipped. And I thought to myself, why are these people not campaigning to just get better conditions for all horses around the world?
But are these race horses? I mean, they must be some of the best looked after animals
are.
in the world.
If you were a horse, you want to be a racehorse.
Yeah, and
honestly.
I think it is sad when it's sad when you see these horses get injured and die. I don't think anyone wants to see that, but by and large, they're all very well treated, and I just think it seems as though their anger, Animal Rising and others, is misplaced, is it not? I don't get
Well,
it.
of course it is, because they're all out there for a jolly. And I mean, they were lucky, actually, as you were saying earlier about your friends in the Working Men's Club. I mean, some of the people at the race, I think, if they got their hands on them,
Well,
they would not have been entirely having a very nice Sunday.
If Animal Rising had gone through the spectators' entrances and made some kind of demonstration in amongst 40 or 50,000 Scousers who were having a drink and an afternoon out, right, that would have been very entertaining. But I just need to point out that on their website, because they renamed themselves, Animal Rising has a new logo, which is kind of like a V with a line across it. So I'll just kind of leave that there.
I wonder what their previous name was. Well, coming up, we're going to be talking about a thespian who's made a bit of an idiot of himself once again, and also the emergency alert system. Are you ready for that? It's all coming up on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham. This is, of course, TalkTV. And we are here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to find the biggest plank of this particular week. And so far, I think there's quite a lot of pretty good contenders. And now it's Laura Dodsworth's turn to give us her second nomination, which I think is pretty damn good, by the way.
I would like to nominate the Brecon Beacons National Park because they have decided that the name Beacon, alongside the logo, which has the symbol of a beacon in it, is not deemed to be consistent with their environmental ethos.
Yes.
Effectively, the idea of burning wood is not consistent with their push towards net zero goals. Now, whatever you think about climate change or climate catastrophe, as it's often known now, and whatever you think about whether humans cause it and should do something about it, it boils down to one simple question. Does changing a logo with a picture of a fire and changing the name of a national park do anything to fight climate change? And the answer is obviously no. And not just that, you could even say it's going to make things worse because they're going to have to produce new signs, aren't they? And they're going to, I mean, I do get the argument that they could revert to Welsh names because it's in Wales, but it's going to be really difficult for a lot of tourists who can't pronounce it, of course, and the reason they're putting alongside is it's about the environment. You know, where's it going to end? Colville, the Black Country and Blackburn going to have to change their names? Are we going to have to get rid of Burns Night, Fireworks Night, Candlemas?
We are.
Is the fire-breathing Welsh dragon on the flag even safe?
Listen,
I'd say
they've got to change the dragon. Maybe put a mask on it. Somebody suggested put a mask on the dragon.
Put a mask on the dragon, or change it for something, I don't know, a little fluffy rabbit or something. Something toothless and not
they've got the Welsh
fire-breathing.
Language Act already in Wales, and I used to do quite a lot of work in Wales, and all the road signs are already in 2 languages, so why couldn't they just keep both of them?
I don't have a problem with it being in Welsh. It's in Wales. If you speak Welsh, use the Welsh pronunciation. I can't pronounce it. I haven't got hope in hell in being able to pronounce it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're in luck.
I don't think that is a Welsh pronunciation of it. It's a new name,
It's a new name.
It's a new name.
It's a new
hang
name.
on.
Yes,
Somebody
it is.
thinks it's an old name because we've got a clip of Michael Sheen.
It's gone back.
The famous actor, who, of course, has got himself involved in quite a few political scramashes of late. Let's have a look at what he says.
A new kind of national park. Not the Brecon Beacons National Park, though. Not anymore. No, this place has a new name now, or rather, an old one. Banau Brycheiniog. An old name for a new way to be. A name from our past to take us into our future.
He calls it,
it's an old name.
He calls it a new kind of national park. There's nothing new about it, apart from the name. It's exactly the same national park as it's always
What's
been.
it called again?
Banau Brycheiniog.
That's good.
Well
done, you.
Thank you very much. Well, he just said it, so otherwise I wouldn't have been able to.
I mean, the problem for me with a lot of this stuff of name changes and taking statues down and changing street names is that, in the end, these people, like whoever's running the Brecon Beacons National Park, they're only the caretakers of something for a short time. It's like somebody taking over a football club and changing the name of it because they don't like that. I will just change Manchester United to Manchester, Emblems or something like that. You can't do it.
No, it's going to change.
It belongs to everybody else.
Well, it's rewriting history, though, isn't it? That's what it comes down to. Once again, we are editing history to fit the current narrative. And actually, just as in 1984, where does that actually end? There actually is no history. You know, there's no news because everything is being changed all of the time.
But it can be your own history, can't it? It's like your own truth. Now you can have your own history. Just make it up as you go along.
1984 is quoted a lot, you know, it's a bit ubiquitous, but it's perfect in this case because the thing is that changing language, like linguistic appropriation, is all about changing how you think, it's about changing how you behave. This is supposed to be a signal. Climate's at the centre of everything. If you look at the National Park website, you know, it's entirely captured by this kind of climate ideology. I'd call it peak insanity. That's what I'd rename them, peak insanity.
I like it.
And actually, that's why the management team deserve this plank, because they're so worried about the trees that they've been symbolically burning on a logo. And by the way, burning wood is supposed to be carbon neutral. If it wasn't carbon neutral, how do they justify cutting down swathes of redwood forests for biomass
It's so
fuel?
exhausting,
The whole thing
isn't
is
it?
absolutely
It's just so exhausting. Just stop. Stop it.
We could have the spare wood for our burners.
We could.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to mention your burner, but we haven't got time because it's now time for Leon's second nomination.
my second nomination is the emergency alert system, which sounds
That's
like
coming this weekend, isn't it?
It sounds like an indie band, doesn't it, from the early 2000s? Emergency alert system, the alarm. But I just find it bizarre that all of us are going to get a message on our phone on Sunday at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, I think it is.
In the middle of the marathon.
Middle of the marathon, middle of a couple of Premier League football games. It's St George's Day as well.
It's St George's Day. It's my birthday.
Blimey, it's Renee's birthday. So everything's going to be interrupted by this alert to tell us that.
Nothing.
By the way, this is happening.
This is a drill.
Yeah, isn't it mad?
It's not even important.
I'm going to be in the theatre. Do you think it's going to just go
well, it's
across
bound
the
to
theatre?
affect you because there will, even if you can actually switch it off, because on my show we had somebody call in and explain how you can switch it all off and it won't matter. However, there will be people who don't know how to do that. So you can be sure that they will have a whole bunch of them going off in all sorts of inappropriate situations.
Well, the worst thing is it's the British government that are running this thing, so it's bound to go wrong, isn't it? There's bound to be a cock-up and we're all going to get sent something.
Here we go. Hang on.
It's an emergency.
Hang on. What's going on for my phone? How has that happened? Hang on. Let me stop it. There you go. Sorry. The point is I had a government minister on the other day and I said, who's going to be able to send this out? And at what point will it become an emergency alarm big enough and will it be the whole country always, or will it be... Because they've said it's for things like if there's a terrorist attack, you might want to know there's been a terrorist attack. Well, fine, you might want to, but it doesn't mean that, it's appropriate for you to get the message. If there's a terrorist attack and you're not anywhere near it, why would you want to worry people?
But also, when there's a terrorist attack, and we have lived through that, all of us have mobile phones and it pops up as a news flash on our mobile phone.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't need an alarm. And what worries me about it is that if you haven't disabled it, and we shall see if that works, won't we, on Sunday, you actually can't use your phone.
Look, I've disabled it. Stop. Stop it.
But you actually won't be able to use your phone until you've acknowledged it.
See, that I don't like.
I don't like that. And where does that go? What's the next
And also,
step?
I noticed that when I switched it off, when I was told how to do it earlier on, I then, when I sort of fired up my phone the next time, it had come back on again. Because, you go into settings and you go down to where the emergency alert is and you just flick it off. It had come back on again without me trying.
What if there's a real emergency at 3 o'clock on Sunday?
Like?
A real emergency. I don't know. It's
and everyone will go there,
right?
Everyone
or a tsunami, and we'll all go there. It's like
the boy who cried wolf, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'll just go, that's fine. It's nothing.
You asked where it's going to go. I can tell you exactly where it's going to go. It's going to go into overreach and overuse. I mean, the government showed during COVID, for instance, how it would use the tiers all the time. We've seen with weather warnings recently. We've got this traffic light system to tell us if it's just a tiny bit warm. I don't trust them not to overuse it for everything they want us to think is an emergency.
And it's coming out of
actually an emergency.
Apparently, it's coming out of the Cabinet Office, and they're going to be the people that finally. So, I mean, you know a bit about that, Leon. Who's going to be on a wet Sunday in sort of October, they go, we better set off the alarm.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to bother the Prime Minister.
This is going to go wrong. I think that they've got a system in America and in Hawaii. They sent out an erroneous message that said there's missiles coming. So obviously everyone took cover and was scared for their lives, and it ended up being just some bloke accidentally sat on the button.
You could be driving down the M4 or something, and this thing goes off, and you just crash the car because you didn't know what it was. I mean, it's bizarre. Anyway, let's hope on Sunday you're ready for it. We shall see. Come on, I've already tried one. That's it. No more. We'll be back after this with a politician. Welcome back to the final part of Plank of the Week. This is the exciting bit. This is where we decide who's actually going to win. And there are an awful lot of worthy winners in here. I mean, I have to say, Brecon Beacon, Sadiq Khan, the SNP, Just Stop All. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's amazing. Dylan Mulvaney. It's going to be very tough, this one. But my final nomination, who may or may not be in the final mix, is the Tory party chairman, a man by the name of Greg Hands, which is a pretty stupid name to begin with. But it's what he does with his hands, which has got him on this week. He did an interview with Laura Kunsberg on Sunday morning on her show, which I always have to watch because basically it's my penance for Sunday. I sort of get to Sunday afternoon and watch it on the iPlayer. But for some obscure reason, I wanted to watch this very carefully. He did something that I don't think I was expecting to see a grown man do. Have a look at this.
What I'm saying is that it's a very fair, reasonable offer, first of all, yeah? I just can't stress enough how that is fair, both to nurses, all of NHS staff.
Now, in case you didn't notice, he's written on his hands. He's actually written, you know, like on his hand, like you used to do at school, to either write somebody's number down, have another go. Can you freeze it while you can? Like, can you actually freeze that? I don't know whether you can. But he's doing an interview on national television for the BBC, the big Sunday morning programme. He's the chairman of the Tory party, and I actually tweeted out, has he his shopping list on his
Well,
hand?
with his reputation, he should have written "keep off" on both of them.
Well, he should have just. I mean, but I can't imagine. I mean, again, Leon, you're the. There you go, nice and clear. There's the picture. I don't think it's clear enough to actually read what it is. He later put out a tweet suggesting that it was a reminder to himself about that famous Liam Byrne note, you know, when they took over from the Labour Party, that there was no money left in the Treasury. I think he made a massive blunder, because, but surely somebody who was advising him would say, by the way, what are you doing with your, why are you writing on your hand?
This is what I find bizarre. I mean, obviously, we all know these politicians go into these interviews with a set of key messages to deliver, but it's not meant to look like you're literally reading them off of your hand. You're meant to look like you're delivering them truthfully.
Well, wouldn't it be better off with a sort of a few bits of paper or something, and a few little, you know,
very
cues.
Unprofessional just to have it on your.
Let's hope it wasn't someone's phone number.
Well, I mean, you never know with Tory MPs, do you? That's the trouble. I mean, maybe we should get somebody to sort of zoom in and see exactly what it said. You know, like call me at 7 o'clock.
See, I feel, you know, in a difficult position here, because my other half does this. He's a grown man, he's a surgeon, and he's always got things written on his hands, and I'm always having a go at him.
Does he read them while he's doing the surgery? That would be a bit worrying, wouldn't it? Oh, I must get some gammon on the way home.
And he says, but then I don't forget them. So he's always, if someone gives him a phone number over the phone, he's just writing it on his hand. I'm like, what are you doing?
I mean, I think it's been quite a long time since I've been out at some function or other, and somebody goes, "What's your number?" and they write it on their hand.
You would.
But because of that, I actually quite like it.
Do you?
I do. There's something really nostalgic and endearing about it. Oh, do you remember the days when we didn't have reminders and notes on our smartphones and we wrote on our hands? It's kind of sweet. It's also reassuringly bumbling. You know, there are people who always think there are big conspiracy theories and cabals afoot. No, that's what politicians do. They write on their hands. Yeah. That's the level of organisation.
Well, I mean, that's Tory party policy for you right there. That's the problem. Right, it's time for me to give away the plank of the week, and I'm going to do it now because here it is, plank of the week. I'm sorry, and I know you're all going to probably revolt against me, but I've got to give it to Dr. Robert Lawrenson, who is, of course, the man that organised the NHS strike, then went on holiday and didn't actually bother to turn up to be on the Comrades picket line. Unbelievable. Thanks to Dr. Renee, thanks to Peter Bleksley, Laura Dodsworth, Leon as well. Thank you very much indeed. Nadine Dorries coming next. This is TalkTV.
It's time for That Was the Woke That Was.
The topical quiz show that goes through all of the wokest stories of the week.
She has been fame hungry from the get-go.
Saturdays at 9 on TalkTV. History is littered with a long line of lovable but angry men. But one man rises above them all.
What just happened?
With Kevin O'Sullivan on TalkTV.